Hey guys, thank you for coming back here to the channel. As I continue to explore and discover Bardsung and sharing this with you, I've been really encouraged by the positive feedback on my previous videos, and thank you guys for commenting and liking and sharing. It's really meant a lot to me, suddenly seeing all this interest in Bardsung and people checking out my videos. So thanks a lot for that. Since I'm saying thanks, I would like to say thank you to the Bardsung Facebook group and all the active members on there. In particular, Sherwin, who's been awesome with answering questions. He's from Steamforge. He's been great to ask little questions and help sort of get to the bottom of some rules, just clarifying some things for us. And then to other community members who have also gotten their games that have been sharing their thoughts. In particular, Scott and Mubin, they have, posted a lot of photos and shared some of their thoughts about the game, and it's been good to sort of compare notes with them to see sort of how they feel and what do they find difficult and what do they like and enjoy, and the community on the Facebook group has been great. If you're not part of the Bardsung Facebook group, go check it out. Fantastic community there. So thank you to all of those guys. Really appreciate you guys being so active and also supportive. So what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is my preliminary thoughts of Bardsung as I'm playing this and sort of formulating ideas and thoughts and opinions in my mind about the game. I cannot call this a review, as I feel like I haven't seen enough of the story yet, and there are so many cards still in the box that I've yet to touch, in particular these asset cards, which I'll get to in a bit, that I don't feel like it would be fair to call this a review. However, I feel like I've played enough to have some honest opinions and some thoughts to share with you guys. So let's get into it. First of all, I want to talk about this over here, the production, the minis, the boards, the cards, or the tokens, and everything that's here. First of all, something small, but something I really appreciate is the handful of dice that is included in the box. It's kind of strange, but you often find a lot of games that just don't give you enough dice, and I'm looking at Fantasy Flight for making us buy their special dice, because it never seems like you have enough of those, especially if you're playing with friends. So smaller point, but something I feel like is worth mentioning. Then the minis, of course, there are, look at this thing, the size of these things, the amount of stuff you get into the box. If you've watched my unboxing, then you'll know what I talk about. There's so much stuff. If you haven't watched the unboxing, go check it on my channel. I guess I'll try and link up here. There's a ton of stuff in here, and I like the plastic. It's nice and hard. It feels like these are good playing pieces. You don't feel like you're gonna break them as you play them. You can have your kid play with this. It'll probably be fine. My daughter has come up here a couple of times. She's almost 4, she's not even 4 yet, and she's playing these together and sort of play, and I've never had to worry. Good quality plastic. I would say detail on the models are pretty good, on par with maybe something like Massive Darkness and some other CMON games. Strangely enough, I don't think this is as good as the Dark Souls minis from it's also from Steamforge, but overall good quality minis, nice dice, fantastic art on the tiles, decent tokens, no problem. The boards, pretty nice thick cardboard here, no problem with that. But I have 2 criticisms that I'm going to share with you guys tonight here, and they actually have to do with the tiles over here and with the playboard. Now, there seems to be a little bit of an aesthetics over function thing going on here. The tiles look fantastic, each one of them wonderful artwork. However, since movement and a lot of, you know, direction and, you know, the spatial element of the game, your range that you can attack, is all determined by the zones. It's sort of hard to see where one zone starts and where one zone ends, because the artwork is set in a way that it looks very organic, which is great. But if you're learning to play the game, it can be a bit of a pain to learn it and to know where one zone starts and one zone ends. Now this one is pretty simple. You can sort of see this line of looks like foliage growing between the cracks. Really nicely done. On the other, the reverse side, it's water over here. So great, easy to see. But there are some other tiles that I still find hard to know where the zones start and end. Now they have included a reference sheet for each of the tiles, which is useful. But it's an extra large piece of paper that you have to the side and keep referencing to. So, you know, a complaint that I have, but I have to digress. I think that's probably going to become less and less of an issue the more you play it. I think you're going to get used to it and you're going to sort of internalize the zones of these tiles the more you play. What I would say is a bigger issue for me here is the game board. First of all, it's enormous. It is very big. I forgot the dimensions. Someone had asked me on one of my previous videos and I didn't measure it, so it is there somewhere. I feel like this takes up too much space and it doesn't necessarily need to be so big. There's a lot of space that just isn't effectively used. On the right hand side you'll see these white squares over here, and it gets darker the further you go on here. This is like a reputation track, and you have a small little token here that moves up and down depending on some of your choices that you make. That's an enormous amount of space for a tiny little function, and I feel like this could have been done in a different way, some easier way to track that. I would even not have mind just having a little paper to record it, but it takes up too much space. It's an enormous chunk of real estate on your board that's dedicated to this sort of a function that's not really super important, at least from what I've played. And like I said, I've only played like 2 full chapters and I've started the 3rd, so I haven't really seen how this really gets into play, but I feel like this is too much. The space over here where these tokens are laid out too, it takes up too much space. I think this should have been at least 15 to 20% smaller. Another thing with the board is, while I like the artwork on the board itself, the resolution is pretty low. As some of the other guys have commented, I forgot who it was, said the artwork on this is quite blurry, and I do agree. The resolution looks pretty low on the board, which is a shame because I do like the look of it. It's like this leather bound, looks like this leather covering with these sort of notes, all these tiles on the side. It looks very thematic, but a little bit low quality here. If you look at it closely, it's not great. My biggest problem with the board though are the boundaries. Now, a lot of how the game works is you're starting at the starting tile here and you're working your way through the dungeon until you've crossed the boundary on the side, on the furthest edge here. And there are 3 possible lines here that could mean the boundary. Now the rulebook says 1, but it's even in the rulebook, it's not super clear. And there's been a discussion on the Facebook group about where the board starts and ends based on some pictures in the rulebook and some examples. So there's been a bit of inconsistencies with that, and inconsistencies are a bit of a thing in this game, which I'll get back to in a bit. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem for me, but other than that, I feel like production-wise, the game is great. Lots of nice cards. These cards feel great. No problem with that. These doors are not part of the core box. They are add-ons that I added. This is the only other add-ons that I added to my game when I bought it, when I pledged for it. but everything else comes in the Hero Pledge, which is the core box and the Fables box. And I did sort of look at the Fables box on my channel too, which you guys can check out. But yeah, components overall pretty good with some issues. Issues. The rulebook is written in a way to help you learn the game. It's tutorialized. The first bit of rules you learn up to the first tutorial, which is the combat tutorial. That gives you information in the order which you would expect. Then you do the combat tutorial. When you complete the combat tutorial, you start reading immediately the next part of the rulebook, which teaches you enough to learn the exploration. And then you do an exploration tutorial. After that, it gives you more information that moves you into the campaign book, the adventure book, and then you start the campaign. This is a great way to teach you the game. However, this makes the game difficult when you're trying to look up a specific rule. Again, there's been some discussions in the Facebook group about this, and Sherwin has said that they are looking into making some player aid that summarizes the actions and some other parts of the game, but I really think that this game would have extremely benefited from a rules reference book. Fantasy Flight have been doing this for ages. They have a tutorial book and then a rules reference. And it's very clear, if you're looking for specific rules, you grab the rules reference. Now, if I'm looking for rules saying about the borders and exploration, it could be in any 3 or 4 sections spread across 2 books. Not crazy about that, and it has definitely caused me, and I believe some of the other guys who've had the game, a bit of headache. So I hope this is something that they address. I hope some official rules reference comes out. I also hope they're going to be releasing some errata. There are some print mistakes on some of the cards. There are some print mistakes in the rulebook. Some of the icons aren't correct, I found, and there are a little bit of inconsistencies with the rules. I would say 95% of it is fine, but that 5% sort of doesn't leave you with a whole lot of confidence about the rest of the rules and the rest of the rulebook. So some issues there. I think the game definitely would benefit from a bit more time in the oven, if you know what I mean. But I didn't find the game hard to learn. Most of the rules are pretty easy laid out, and for the most part you can learn the game pretty okay. It's just when you are trying to get to the bottom of specific rules, then it becomes a problem. So yeah, some errors in the cards, some errors in the rule books. Finding rules can be a bit of a problem if you're looking for something specific. Let's talk a little bit about combat and gameplay. Now overall, off the bat, I enjoy playing the game. The game is fun to play. Setup and teardown is quite quick. You know, a lot of it's thanks to these fantastic game trays and the player board game trays. You know, you can baggy up these cards, you know, and have the game going in less than 10 minutes. For a fairly, you know, large game with a lot of components, under 10 minutes is pretty good. And I would say you can consistently get this game on the table and packed away in 10 minutes. 10 minutes on, less than 10 minutes off, I would say. So yeah, that's pretty great. Then I love the initiative system. The initiative system is simple. Each character is represented with a card. Each monster is represented with a card. You shuffle it up, you pop it at the bottom, and you know which character goes next. Super simple. The characters' stats are on their initiative cards. Great. Bosses work a little bit differently. Their attacks are initiative cards, so their stats are on a different card, but then their attacks go onto the initiative track. Really nice. I really like that. One thing, doors. If you think about a dungeon crawler, doors are there just to indicate the portals where you can go in and out, right? Here it actually makes a difference. Closing up a door divides the dungeon into different areas. Now, why is that important? It's because of this echo token. This is sort of um, represents a moving danger, moving closer towards you, chasing the heroes down as they are delving deeper into this dungeon. This moves at the start of at the end of a round. You will roll a d6, and on 1 or 2, this echo moves from one area to another area. That's why you always close these doors. You want there to be as many areas between your party and that echo token, because that echo token can spawn some wandering monsters, some baddies, and they can really mess with your day. So I like that the doors are functional. Opening and closing them actually has more of a function than in a lot of similar games. Playing the game, and I play this solo, and I probably will primarily play this solo. Handling 3 characters, dead simple. It's not super complicated, and it's very manageable. Coming from a game like Folklore, The Affliction, I found quite a lot of overhead in controlling 3 or more characters in that game. It's too much. Bardsung, no problem. Handling 3 characters, even 4, you can even try 5. It's not that hard. I would say your table space, obviously, because you'll need some table space for each of the characters, but it's easily manageable in handling multiple characters. I would almost say going through solo with 1 character, not that fun, for a few reasons. That one being, a lot of the characters' abilities synergize with each other, and figuring out those combos is a pretty fun part of the game. You could play true solo, and there are true solo rules. I know a lot of people have asked. I know it's in there, and I'm sorry I don't know the rules off the top of my head, but I do believe you get some AI cards that come with you, an NPC that's not represented in a figure, it is represented in a card that sort of helps you, and I do believe you get more health, or there's something that helps you out. But yeah, game is totally manageable. Playing solo with 3 characters, it's a breeze. Speaking of the characters, they are all pretty distinct, and they have a sort of unique flavor to them and a unique way of interacting with each other, interacting with the monsters. Their attacks, how they move, is all very distinct and very thematic based on their roles. I love how Nightfeather can hop in and out. This rogue hops in, dodges, throws a knife, flips over another creature, taunts it, pulls it towards you, deals a hit, then moves back. You got Stoneheart, big bruiser. She's got a big hammer. She charges, starts swinging her hammer, smashing faces. Fantastic. Then you got Lightweaver. Sorry, for a moment I almost forgot her name. Lightweaver, always there in the back, firing magic bolts, knocking enemies back, dealing nice damage. 3 characters. These are my 3 that I always play with. Their abilities synergize really well, and it's really fun moving them about the board and having combat with them. However, I feel like the variety in the dungeons as you are moving, the gameplay variety feels a little bit limited, and you moving after a couple of combat encounters, it does start to drag a little bit. You're flipping over another room card, and then you draw, and then you see it's another combat encounter, and that can sort of tire you out after a while, because you're basically moving one room to another room, and then there's a bunch of enemies you have to do. And I personally felt like I was losing steam after a while. After playing 2 or 3 encounters, I started feeling less enthused about continuing, so I had to take some breaks. This might not be a big issue with for other people, but I found that there seems to be a little bit of lack of gameplay variety. Most of it is starting here in tile and reaching the end to escape the dungeon or finding a secret exit, but you're basically doing the same thing. There are some other variations on the typical dungeon crawl. One is we're outlasting a bunch of attacking enemies. That's the biggest one, biggest difference one, biggest one that's, I would say, different than the others. And then there are boss encounters, of course, that are pretty interesting. But most of it is a variation on the typical crawling from here to the end, with not a ton of variety in that. Now, the biggest thing that brings variety are these aspect decks. Now there are two. There's a challenge aspect deck and there's a combat aspect deck. Now these are, I would say, I feel, other than combat, these are the beating heart of Bardsung. These are the cards, and this is the part of the game that I enjoy the most. And what are they? Depending on what tile you draw, you're either going to draw a challenge deck, a challenge card, or a battle card. Battle cards make something happen in that tile. It can either buff the enemies, it can take out an enemy. You could sort of use something that that allows you to knock out an enemy, or most of the time it hinders you. But the challenge deck can be a multitude of things. It could be a simple thing like dodging a trap, or more interestingly enough, some narrative encounters come out of here. And I found one or two in here so far that have been really interesting, and one in particular a bit gut-wrenching. I gotta tell you, it was a tough choice to make. So yeah, there's some interesting stories in there, and I feel like these aspect decks are probably the best part for me personally, other than the great characters and the combat, which is, you know, quite fun. The aspect deck is pretty special, and I think as you guys get your hands on it, you're going to be surprised about some of the stuff that comes out of the aspect decks. What else? Let me have a look. Oh, loot. Now, there is a little loot deck that you can get. However, this is one criticism I have of the game. The loot isn't all that exciting. Some of it is, you know, simple things like replenishing one of your tokens here. The most effective and probably the best ones that you get are gems that attach to your weapons, that buff its rolls. But you are not really going to find a super special, you know, dagger of the gods or boots of light step or anything mystical in the treasure deck. I had a quick look through the treasure deck. I didn't really see anything that made it seem like that there's anything other than simple consumables. And some of the consumables can add a cool one-time effect to your weapon and to your attack. But the loot is a little underwhelming, I would say. It's understandable for the game to feel balanced. They had to sort of make that decision to not include overpowered weapons. And, you know, armor and special items and rings and whatever. So most of it is, you know, fairly, you know, underwhelming. But it is what it is. Let me talk about the last thing. Oh, if you do not want to play with this character, if I am tired of old Lightweaver here, swapping out Lightweaver with one of the other characters, like Wild Shell over here, to try them out, is not a big issue. The way you would do it is you would go count up the amount of XP that you've gained up to now, and you make paper record of it, you pencil it in on this record sheet. Now I just photocopied this out of the rule book, out of the adventure book. Tally up how much XP there is, and then assign that much XP to the character that you're swapping in, and then you can play with the character. Now the character will lose out on some of these loot upgrades and so on their weapons, but overall the character wouldn't feel super underpowered swapping them in, which is a nice bonus. Lastly, let's talk about the story. Now, this is a part of the game that I feel like I don't really know how to critique at this point because I've seen not a lot of it. Another thing is the foreteller app integration. The narration of the story is also not yet released. That would come out closer to when the rest of the world starts receiving their copies. So sadly, I cannot comment on that. So far, what I can say about the story, it's pretty simple. There's hasn't been anything mind-blowing. But what I've read so far is written quite well, and it definitely has it sets the scene really well for each of these encounters, for each of these chapters. The narratives that you find in these aspect cards, in these challenge decks, really well written. Some of the NPCs that you encounter, they have some interesting dialogue there too. So great stuff so far. But I feel like one thing the game is missing is telling us more about our characters. I have Stoneheart, which I love the look of her. I love the look of Lightweaver and Nightfeather and Wildshell and Stormguard. I don't know anything about these characters. I just know that they are trying to help these villagers out. About their own personal story, you'd imagine there'd be some information on the back of these cards, but there really isn't. There isn't a ton of backstory here. There's nothing much that tells us more who Stoneheart is, and that's sort of disappointing. At least maybe it's somewhere online or on the website. I haven't seen anything, or maybe on the Kickstarter page, possibly, but it should be in the game. It shouldn't be on the website. That's how I feel if it is there. So yeah, it sort of misses that. It sort of helps. It sort of makes me, wish that there was a little bit more to each of these characters. I would love to know more about them because I think they look interesting, and I'm pretty sure they have an interesting story to tell. At the moment, they're just the heroes trying to save the villagers, and that's a little bit disappointing. So yeah, the lack of character backstory is disappointing. I would like to see a little bit more of that, and maybe that's included in the foreteller narration part. But so far, sadly, not a lot. And I wish I could talk more about the story, but as I said, I've only experienced a tiny sliver of it. There are 30 something chapters in here. In this adventure book. Now, you don't go through them in order necessarily. There are some branching paths. You might go from chapter 1 to chapter 2 or 3 or 4, and then from there you might jump to 6 or 7 or 8. So you're not necessarily going to see all the chapters in a single playthrough. But I believe that, or I would hope, and I would assume that you would get a lot more of the story the more you play, and I'm sure things are going to get interesting. Where I'm now, I'm not going to give away spoilers, but I'm sort of discovering the layer of a thing that seems to set up some larger event, and I hope to see more of that. So, final thoughts for tonight. Right now I can say I really enjoy the gameplay, though as I said before, I do feel it gets a little grindy and a little repetitive at some point, and then I feel like I need to take a break. It's not like I want to keep playing and non-stop. I do feel like after a few sessions, I sort of feel like I want to pack away the game, for a day or two, come back to it a little bit later. That's a personal thing. This may be completely different to you or anybody else, but that's how I feel about it. I feel like moving from tile to tile, doing combat started wearing on me after a while. So I hope that the game introduces a little bit more variety later into the chapter, shake things up. I think there's a lot of possibility for that. And with the hundreds of cards and of these aspect cards that are in this box, and the tons of narrative cards and all the narrative text that's in this book, I hope it shakes up things. Um, and with the boss battles, I've seen one boss battle so far, which I really, really liked. And I'm excited to play more and get to that boss battle. But then I think about, oh man, I'm looking at the next chapter that I'm in, and there's like 4 or 5 encounters that I have to potentially play to get there. And I hope I'm going to have enough enthusiasm to push through to get there, because I think there's a lot of good stuff in here, a lot of good stories, a lot of good ideas, a lot of interesting monsters I haven't seen yet. I hope I don't tire out before I get there, because at the moment, how I feel about the game, and this you could sort of take as my final thought. I enjoy it, I want to see more of it, but I'm going to have to see something a little bit earlier. I'm going to have to see something that tells me the game is going to be shaken up a little bit more as I play, and pretty soon. Otherwise, I feel like I might lose enthusiasm for it after a while. But what's here at the core feels great. It is a solidly made game. Its combat flows smoothly. Once you learn the game, there's some small rules you look up, but for the most part, you wouldn't need to constantly reference the rule book. And like I said, the game requires a rules reference in the back, or some rules reference sheet. In the rulebook here, the icons are all nicely laid out at the back, and that I do have to give to Steamforged Games, is pretty great. I can't tell you how many games I found that you go on this icon hunt. What does this icon mean? And then you're like going through the page by page. You're going through page by page looking for that one icon, and sometimes it's in a totally different place where you thought it was going to be. So here, finding icons and specific effects is right in the back here. I just wish there's this hero action summary and the possible things that you can do, and sort of the gameplay flow is summarized somewhere. I think it's necessary for the game, for people to learn the game easier. But like I said, I'm excited to still play more of it, but I'm hoping for some variety soon. Anyway, I think that's it. I hope you guys found this useful. I hope my ramblings made sense, and I hope you guys are getting a better idea of how this game is going to turn out. And I can say there's a lot of people who are going to enjoy the heck out of this game. I'm curious to know how this is going to be with a group. I would love to play at least a session or two with my game group and sort of see how they feel about it. I think it's going to add a little bit of an extra dynamic if you have some other people in the game, because like I said, I'm playing this solo, and probably will continue playing this solo unless I can get somebody over here, because I'm not moving this box easily to another person's house or somewhere else. So but yeah, that's it. That is it for my sort of preliminary thoughts on Bardsung. I hope you guys get your copies soon. I know I've seen the Facebook group, and I see you guys are tracking those ships going to different parts of the world, and I hope you are getting your hands on your copies soon so that we can all talk about it and enjoy the game. I'm interested and excited to see what crazy house rules and variants and community mods and community content is going to come from this game, because one aspect I didn't really talk about is the potential modability and the potential for user-created content is something I think is very exciting for this game. But that's it. That's it from me for tonight. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, and I hope to see you guys again soon on my channel. But until then, bye-bye.